Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Big Nickel IDP podcast. I am your host, Jon Macri, fantasy analyst at PFF. Feels like it's been a minute since we did this pod, but we're back in the saddle, ready to review the NFL draft, specifically as it relates to our beloved IDPs, starting with a very interesting edge class. There's plenty to discuss with how these guys will fit into their new teams and what kind of impact we can expect for fantasy. So I'm ready to get into it. I hope you are as well. Let's get it. All right, time to dive into it. And not only am I back, but I'm bringing Sexy back as well to help me sort out this class with the one and only Joey the Tooth. Joey, how are you, my man?
I'm good. How you doing, buddy?
I'm pretty good. I'm good. It's
William
been
Manderson now.
Yes, William Manderson.
So since he's
Jr.
been drafted, he's become a man.
He's become a man. That's right.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Excited about Anderson, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this class does. I feel pretty confident about him, but I mean, we'll work our way through it and stuff. But yeah, how'd you enjoy the draft and everything?
I actually didn't watch too much of it. I just kept up on updates, but I don't know. It's kind of lackluster, honestly.
Yeah.
I feel like it wasn't much that I was like, oh, that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
Will Anderson, the Texans trading up for Will Anderson. I was like, oh cow, wow.
Yeah.
All right, that was a big move. But other than that, I was kind of. All right.
Yeah.
The 49ers took a kicker in the third, so I was pumped about that.
Oh, buddy, what was that? Did you get your Jake Moody jersey yet, or
dude?
That was like their second pick of the draft, right?
They lost one of their starting offensive tackles, and I don't think they drafted an offensive lineman.
Man, yeah, that was a weird choice, especially since Robbie Gould is there, right? Like,
well, no, they actually they let him go in free agency this year because
they really
they couldn't come to terms on a contract, which kind of worries me because he's just been so steady and good.
Yeah,
and now they're going to put all their money in
how much I pay attention to
rookie.
kickers.
I know.
Yeah,
I love Robbie Gould, though.
Yeah, Gould was awesome, man. He was steady. But yeah, no, you're right. It was a weird kind of draft, like nothing too exciting, at least for IDP. Usually we get like a few really exciting landing spots. This year really kind of a mixed batch of just kind of either
Jack Campbell
options. Yeah, Jack Campbell's the one, Will Anderson, but man, anybody can emerge anywhere, and then a lot of guys are going to get buried as well. So yeah, it was kind of a mid draft, but I mean, there's some good players in there still. Just landing spots weren't the best, right? So we'll work through it. We'll figure out, kind of which guys, how they fit in where, and what their roles might be, what they might look like for IDP purposes and stuff like that. I know we got like 7 edge defenders drafted from the first round. So we'll talk about all of those guys. We'll talk about 3 more from the second round. So that'll round out like the first 10 edges drafted. That's what we'll focus on. But then we'll also add in a couple sleeper picks as well at the end who kind of went outside of that range. So yeah, what do you say we just get into it here and start with Will Anderson? First round pick out of Alabama and 3rd overall.
Yeah, traded up for Will Anderson. That was a bold move, very bold move. But I mean, he's the best defender in the draft, arguably the best player in the draft. Will Anderson's phenomenal, and then he joins a group that's pretty lackluster, honestly. He to me, he comes in as he's instantly the best pass rusher on the team. And there's Jonathan Greenard. He had one good year, but even in that good year, it was an unbelievable conversion rate. Like his pressures were low. Like his conversion rate was unbelievable. I don't remember what it was, but I remember I did it as a sell high candidate last year, and he got hurt last year, right? He was out for most of the year. But
yeah, he missed some time.
I mean, you have Greenard, and then they brought in Chase Winovich, who's on his 3rd team in 3 years. Surprisingly, honestly, I thought after the beginning of his career in New England, I thought he was actually going to have a pretty decent career, but he just
Hmm.
kind of tailed off. And then
Yeah.
old man wonder Jerry Hughes, who actually played very well last year.
Yeah.
But I mean, at that group, it'll probably be a slight rotation, but I don't even think it's going to be that heavy of a rotation. I think it's going to be Will Anderson and Jonathan Greenard almost predominantly.
Hmm.
So Anderson has the ability on that team to play 3 downs. So I think he's going to be on the field a lot. So I love the landing spot for him, and I think he can be productive from week 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. That's one of the main things, right? The landing spot's great. I think he would have been pretty much landing spot proof no matter where he went, but it's still nice to have that kind of clear path to snaps. Probably one of the few players in this class that does have that, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, you're right. I mean, elite pass rusher, we know that even without that crazy kind of bend to his game, still wins consistently at a high level. I think that's going to translate to playing with the Texans as well. And he can handle himself as a run defender. We talked about that. So he should be in for a nice every down role or near something close to it. One of the things, I really liked about the Texans specifically and D'Amico Ryan's scheme. He ran when he was with the 49ers, one of the highest stunt rates in the league last season, second highest stunt rate. At 34% of passing plays. We talked about how much, we loved Anderson's quickness at the line of scrimmage. And, if they start scheming up rushes for him on stunts and really utilize that speed and pass rush prowess that he has, I think he could be deadly for the Texans as well. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the edge depth there is kind of ridiculous. Like, Jerry Hughes, like you said, 69 years old, whatever he is now. Still an effective pass rusher somehow. And then a couple like 1-year wonders, right? Like Chase Winovich and Jonathan Greenard. We'll see what happens with Greenard, but so far it's really just 1 year on his resume. Obviously love Anderson. He was my number 1 rookie IDP pre-draft. That didn't change post-draft.
Yeah.
I think he should be considered the most valuable defensive player in this class.
Agreed.
Yeah, man. All right. Next guy drafted was Tyree Wilson. So he goes to the Las Vegas Raiders, first round pick out of Texas Tech, 7th overall. So this was one when we talked about it in the pre-draft. This was my favorite landing spot for him in the pre-draft episode. So I definitely like the fit. I'm really glad that he's going to have a chance to play behind some established starters at least to start his career. And I'm also kind of glad the NFL didn't go like the mystery box route again this year, like they did last year with Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson, right? Like,
Right.
not just as like I think it was a plus 275 better of Will Anderson as the first defensive player drafted, but just for the sake of how to value athleticism in purely developmental projects, it's putting way too much faith in your belief that a player will absolutely develop into the elite prospect that you're hoping for, and not just sure. I just don't think anybody should be that confident in their evaluations, considering how
Oh,
often
yeah.
these guys don't work out, right? And
Yep.
so far with Walker, it hasn't necessarily looked that great. But again, it's only 1 year, and we knew it was kind of a developmental thing. But there was talk about Tyree Wilson going ahead of Will Anderson in this draft as well, right? So hopefully, there gets to be a better value or evaluation process for these freaky athletes that maybe need some time to develop into elite pass rushers in the NFL, because Will Anderson should come out the gate swinging, whereas Tyree Wilson maybe not so much. But even 7th overall pick, could be argued as a bit early for Wilson, but I do get it to an extent, although I wouldn't have taken him over Jalen Carter, for example. So you know, he lands in a good spot, I think, to develop and play behind Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, guys who have had success winning in a variety of ways in their NFL careers. And it gives him a chance to learn from them before he's thrust into a full-time starting role, which I figure won't be until next year at the earliest, even with Jones, taking a significant step back last year. But I have him ranked as my 4th ranked IDP in this class, behind Anderson, Campbell, Carter. And I get it if anyone wants to put him higher based on potential, or even put him lower because he is a project and isn't slated for a volume heavy role early in his career. So either way, he isn't someone I've actually drafted so far in my rookie drafts. I just think, like Trayvon Walker last year, he makes sense as someone to try and buy a little cheaper down the road while he's on the brink of breaking out, maybe like year 3, something like that. But I'd be surprised if we get consistent production out of him prior to that.
Yeah, I really like the landing spot too. I mean, he gets to learn from Crosby and Chandler Jones. I think being just a pass rush specialist to start his career, it's going to mask some of his deficiencies. I mean, the whole talk about him going over Anderson was kind of mind blowing because I mean, Wilson's not really like an explosive athlete. Like Trayvon Walker was an explosive athlete at the combine. I mean, Wilson didn't really compete at the combine because he had the injury and he didn't really show like too much explosion on the field. But I mean, he was a massive man and very explosive for his giant frame. So it's nice seeing him land at a spot where he can learn from a couple of veterans and move into a role that's still going to put him across from a premier pass rusher. So I love the landing spot. So I actually think I have Wilson as my IDP 3 just because I think his long-term potential is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I get it for sure, right? He's got ridiculous wingspan. He's got great size. That, again, the athleticism's there. It's just, yeah, once he gets to that potential, if he does, I mean, that's where you'll really start to see that value come through for
Yeah.
IDP. So I absolutely get it. Yeah, man. So another guy drafted here in the top half of the first round, it was Lukas Van Ness, goes to the Green Bay Packers, first round pick out of Iowa, and it was 13th overall. What did you think about Lukas Van Ness in Green Bay?
I like the landing spot. It's a little more crowded than some of the other spots, but I mean, it comes with. I think Van Ness is going to be able to move around the line a little bit. So in Green Bay, they have Rashawn Gary. He's coming back off of an injury from last year. And then once he went down, I mean, their pass rush seems to suffer. I mean, they have Kingsley Enagbare, rookie from last year, and Preston Smith. Preston Smith's I think 32 this year, so he's getting old. Kingsley Enagbare didn't really show too much last year, and it showed that they needed to add depth in the line. So then they go and get Lukas Van Ness, who's just a pure power pass rusher, something that not many of these guys actually are. And he comes also with the ability to play a little defensive end. He could play on the inside a little bit, a 3-4 D end, while a couple of the other guys play outside linebacker. So he has the ability to slide outside, stay inside a little bit. So I actually like the fit in Green Bay. I mean, they have Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark, and then I think it's Dean Lowry on the inside. So Van Ness able to slide all along that line is actually a great move for Green Bay and keep that line strong. I mean, it's been one of their strengths for a few years now, and adding Van Ness just keeps it going.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's you nailed it. That's everything that I think of with Van Ness as well, like that pure power. He's an absolute specimen, great size. And yeah, definitely opportunity for him to play more inside, which he did quite a bit in college as well. It's a really nice landing spot, even with Rashawn Gary back in the lineup. I mean, like you said, Preston Smith's nearing the end of his career. I think he should be a big part of the future there in Green Bay. I think I have him as IDP 5 in this rookie class. So yeah, I like the landing spot a lot. I wasn't crazy about him in the pre-draft process, but I mean, I think he's still going to get decent opportunity in Green Bay, even with Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary, just because, like you said, he has that versatility to play all along the line and be effective, and that power is an NFL level. So he should be able to translate, hopefully, to the next level. All right, let's go from Iowa to Iowa State. Will McDonald, first round pick out of Iowa State, and 15th overall goes to the New York Jets. So another guy I wasn't like a big fan of when we did this in the pre-draft process. Looking at him from an IDP lens, I just think he's going to be very boom bust based on kind of how teams, and now specifically the Jets, might view him and use him. To me, he projects very much like a pass rush specialist. and doesn't have the ideal size or strength to necessarily get that consistent work on rundowns when offensive linemen are on the attack, right? So you factor in, players like that should see decent snaps over there. Carl Lawson, John Franklin Myers. They just spent a first round pick on Jermaine Johnson last year as well. It doesn't leave a ton of opportunities for him to get relevant IDP snaps. I could see them using him like a kind of like a souped up Bryce Huff from last year, where they literally only played him on third and fourth downs, like obvious passing situations. So can see that at least for him in year one. But yeah, I don't love his opportunity as a rookie. He's not like Lukas Van Ness, where you can kick him inside and he can work, you know, on run defense in the middle of the line or attack from the middle. He is a smaller player, but I think it's going to take him some time. So I think I have him IDP 11 for this class right now.
Yeah, I think I have somewhere right around that range as well. And I think the Jets went into the draft thinking the same thing, that they know that's what McDonald is. So
Mm-hmm.
they looked at their roster, and Jermaine Johnson, he's actually a fantastic run defender. John Franklin Myers, also a pretty good run defender.
Mm-hmm.
So then they have Will McDonald, who can come in, just play pure pass rush snaps. He's on the field. He's got one job, just pass rush, which he's good at. He can pass rush. He's quick, something that they kind of lack from that team.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think, like you said, he's just going to be pure pass rush. I don't think Jermaine Johnson's going to. I think he's going to play a lot more on rundowns this year than he did as a rookie. And I think Will McDonald's really just going to come in and just third down, really, and just pass rush. That's it.
Yeah.
I think Carl Lawson's still going to be the dominant snap guy, him and Franklin Myers, and I think it's Jermaine Johnson's going to work in a little bit. And I honestly don't see Will McDonald. I think he's probably going to be third or fourth in the depth chart.
Yeah. Yeah, at least for this year, right? I mean,
Right.
there's a chance they'll move on from Carl Lawson next year, and
Yeah.
we'll see what happens with John Franklin Myers as well. But yeah, this year for sure. I mean, it just feels like a pass rush specialist type situation, and I'll be really interested to see how he does in the NFL, just considering his size and everything. And but yeah, if they use him in that kind of Bryce Huff role like last year, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Let's go to Miles Murphy. Also a first round pick, goes to the Cincinnati Bengals, coming out of Clemson, 29th overall. What did you think about Murphy to the Bengals?
Murphy pre-draft was my DE2. He
Mhm.
was just right behind Will Anderson. I feel like he's the most complete edge defender in this class outside of Anderson. And I actually like the landing spot in Cincinnati. So Joseph Asai, he showed some flashes. So he's the other young defender there. But Sam Hubbard has always been a fantastic run defender, but he lacked an actual pass rush.
Yeah.
Trey Hendrickson was actually a good pass rusher, but he lacked in his run defense.
Yeah.
Miles Murphy comes in, and he's already the most complete edge defender on that team. I mean, he's going to be a better pass rusher than Sam Hubbard, and he's going to be a better run defender than Trey Hendrickson, and he's better at both than Joseph Asai. So I think both Hubbard and Hendrickson, I think they got extensions, but I think after 2024, they have outs in their contracts, both their contracts. So I think it could be as soon as 2024 that Miles Murphy is actually the best edge defender on that team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're locked in together on Miles Murphy. We both had him edge two before the draft, and we both see the landing spot the exact same way. I agree with you completely, man. Like Sam Hubbard, he's just an okay pass rusher, very much a compiler at that position, because he does, he puts up decent numbers, but he's not, winning consistently or cleanly on a regular basis. So. Yeah, absolutely. I think he could develop into a better pass rusher than Hubbard and a better run defender than Trey Hendrickson. I don't think Trey Hendrickson is going to see a lot more of those run defense opportunities with Murphy in the mix now as well. So, yeah, I actually really like the fit. I think he can be a real asset for their defensive line and cover up some of those flaws of their starters, like you said. And yeah, the good thing, about the way this draft shook out, as much as we loved him, we had him as our edge too. You don't have to take him that high because of how the draft shook out. So typically see him going later in the 4th round on average. So easy to grab in all formats, and even stashing him should pay off down the road, like you said, with those contract outs in 2024. So I still love him. I have him ranked as my IDP 6, but again, you probably don't have to take him that high. You can likely wait it out slightly longer than that in drafts.
Yeah.
All right, another first round guy, Nolan Smith out of Georgia, lands with the Philadelphia Eagles. Shocker, 31st overall, Nolan Smith. So I feel almost exactly the same about Smith as I did with McDonald. Both guys profile very similarly as these kind of strong pass rushers, but on the smaller side, and they might get pushed around a little bit more on rundowns. So for me, Smith was he was actually a lot more impressive as a run defender than McDonald, because even at his size, he clearly has strength to his game.
Right.
He just might not necessarily be enough to translate to the NFL. We'll see how the Eagles use him, but he does have a lot more competition for snaps than even McDonald when you consider the quality of players on that Eagles defensive line: Reddick, Sweat, Graham, even Barnett. But it's really kind of a perfect spot too, at the same time, to learn, how to overcome size issues as an edge rusher, landing with Hassan Reddick, who almost exactly the same coming out of college, right? He was the smaller guy that was an edge in college that they talked about moving off ball, but there were similar thoughts with Nolan Smith before the draft as well. So I think I mentioned this on our live stream show of the draft as well, but maybe it's a crazy idea, but I think I mentioned it, but there was talks about Smith potentially playing like off ball in the NFL, just like Reddick. So would the Eagles want to try him there occasionally as a rookie to get him on the field, especially considering, his strong run instincts, and somewhere where he can maybe avoid the size issues a little more in that regard might be an asset there, especially for a team that doesn't have much depth behind Dean and Morrow. So I don't know. It's something that I'm floating out there as a maybe. We'll see, because these NFL teams, obviously they'll get a look at these guys and figure out exactly what their strengths are and how they fit into the defense once they get them on the field. But because of the size thing and because of his ability to play the run so well and so sound, I just thought, maybe there's a chance that they would utilize him there as like a depth option at the off-ball linebacker spot, while he gets used to playing in the NFL, and just to get him on the field, basically.
Yeah, it's a weird landing spot. I mean, the Eagles killed the draft. They did a great job. Their front office is leaps and bounds, seems like ahead of everybody else right now. But Smith, at his size, he shows a great ability to anchor in the run game. Like he can hold his spot with bigger linemen. So, like you said, he's a much better run defender than Will McDonald is. And with that said, like you said, off-ball linebackers not really out there as an idea. I mean, he's just a great player. He's very instinctive. It was always just a size issue, so he was kind of a tweener. It was just like Reddick was when he came in. Does he move to off-ball linebacker? Does he stick to edge? It's almost like, hey, look what we did with Reddick. Let's just keep Nolan Smith in the same way. If we can do this with Reddick, why can't we do it with Smith? So Brandon Graham's getting older, obviously. I mean, he's 35 this year. Yeah. He's old.
Yeah, he's
he's old. I mean, last year was his most productive season, pretty much. If you look based off of like pure efficiency and everything, it was like one of his best seasons ever. So learn from Brandon Graham. You can the Eagles obviously use a pass rush rotation. I think Hassan Reddick was their highest in snaps. I think he was only like 74% or 79% last year. So they obviously use a pass rush rotation. So he will see the field. And if they do dabble with him in off-ball linebacker, then he's definitely going to see the field a lot more. So the potential is there for Smith. You just kind of have to see how his usage is going to play out. But, I mean, at worst case, you could see maybe Josh Sweet like from 2 years ago where he was coming off the bench a little bit. So maybe that type of role.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we're not starting him as a rookie, most likely. If you drafted him in a dynasty rookie draft, you're just not going to play him year one. He'll be on the taxi squad more than likely. And I mean, outside of like the deepest deep leagues, you're just there's going to be other more reliable edge defenders on a weekly basis. But he is a really good player, and like you said, it's a great landing spot to kind of learn from the likes of like guys like Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham. But yeah, it's gonna. I think it's just gonna take some time for him to develop, or at least see the field on a consistent basis where we can trust him. So it does make sense. Um, let's go to one more first round edge out of Kansas State. Felix Anudike-Uzomah goes to the Kansas City Chiefs with the 32nd overall pick. So, what did you think about the Chiefs landing FAU?
I love their landing spot. It's fantastic. There's not much there to challenge him. I mean, George Karlaftis, he's going to be in the other end. Obviously, last year's first round pick, he finished the season on fire last year. And then there's really nobody else. I mean, they brought in Charles Omenihu. Charles
Mhm.
Omenihu, he's also been a player who's been a little underwhelming throughout his career. Last year, he got the option to play a little less, but still he played across from Nick Bosa, and he had his best year to date. But still, I think it was only 5 sacks last season. So,
Mhm.
I mean, he's not going to come in and light the world on fire. And I love what FIU brings to the Chiefs. I mean, he brings length, he brings athleticism, he brings his bend, something that they don't have. Like Karlaftis, as good as he was, he's still more of a power rusher. And FAU, he brings that athleticism, he brings the bend, he brings a little more explosion. And I think I think he could challenge Amenhu for snaps right away and
Mhm.
possibly even a starting role. I mean, and it would almost be smart for the Chiefs to even slide Amenhu inside. I mean, he's played some interior line with when he was with the Texans, I believe. And I mean, outside of Chris Jones, they have what, Derek Anati, who's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's Derek Anati.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want your best players on the field at the time, FAU, Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Charles Omenihu, that's a pretty potent pass rush front line.
Yeah.
So I actually think he could be a very productive and high volume rookie.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, he was another guy that I was excited about pre-draft, and he just barely sneaks into the first round here. And I'm with you. I like the landing spot a lot. And I like what you said too, in getting those guys on the field all at once, because the Chiefs did that a lot last year with their edge rushers. They really liked. I think they used like a mugged up look more than any other team defense in the NFL last year, and they did that by not only including their linebackers up on the line of scrimmage, but putting a lot of edge rushers out there on obvious passing downs. So they would use whether it was Frank Clark or Michael Dana. Who else was there? Carlos Dunlap, guys like that, George Karlaftis as well. They put them all out there at once, along with Chris Jones, to make the most effective pass rushing defensive line that they have. So it makes sense, especially with Clark and Dunlap out the door. You've got options now with Anudike-Uzomah and Charles Omenihu, like you said, can play inside as well. He's comfortable there. Karlaftis as well, whoever it ends up being. But there's opportunity for snaps there and big pass rush snaps as well, which is something that I think FAU was one of the better, more polished pass rushers at in this class. So there should be opportunity there. There should be some IDP relevancy as well. So I'm pretty optimistic about him in Kansas City. I think.
Yeah. I think he's actually the guy I've drafted the most so far because
Nice.
his name somehow just keeps dropping and dropping and dropping.
Right.
Everybody's going for all these other prospects, and it's just I'm still getting him in like the end of the fourth, the fifth round, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. I mean,
mm-hmm,
yeah, I think I have him as my IDP 10.
mm-hmm,
And I just think he didn't get the pre-draft hype that a lot of these other guys did. And I don't know if it was just, playing at Kansas State or whatever. It's not like the biggest of name schools, I guess. So yeah, maybe that was part of it. right at the end of the first round as well. It's not as exciting, but it's a great landing spot. He's a
Yeah.
great player. I think there's definitely opportunity there. That's great value in the fourth, fifth round for sure. All right, let's go into the second round here. And the first edge drafted in the second round was Derek Hall, out of Auburn, goes to the Seattle Seahawks, 38th overall. So this was the only guy that got drafted inside the top 10 edge rushers that we didn't talk about last time around. Keon White was one that we did talk. He drops out. I think we both had him as 10 anyways, on our pre-draft list. And he's actually, by the way, another landing spot that I called correctly. So if you want to hear my thoughts on Keon White and him in New England, then listen to the pre-draft episode because we literally covered it. But yeah, back to Hall, where the Seahawks apparently had a first round grade on him. That like they had 20 players of the first round grade. They had Derek Hall as a first round player. So really interesting there. They're really high on him. Obviously explains why they went early second round in the draft. I mean, he's a good player for sure. They posted an 87.5 2-year pass rush grade, which was ninth best for this edge class, but was even better on like true pass sets as well. He had a 91.1 pass rush grade, which was fifth in this class. So strong numbers there. But he's not great in run defense, which is fine because he'll still probably be better than Darrell Taylor, who was awful last year. So decent shot at opportunity, decent pass rush metrics, high-end athleticism. I like his chances to see the field as a rookie and be like a significant part of that Seahawks defense. I know Adam's a big fan of his as well, and we know Adam has an unreal eye for talent. So just another box ticked for Mr. Hall with the Addy stamp of approval. But yeah, I feel okay about him in Seattle. I know there's some guys there in Uchenna Nwosu, Darrell Taylor, but Boye Mafe from last year's draft as well from the second round. But I think he's decent enough, and they're obviously high on him, that they'll probably get him out there quite a bit, and he could be relevant in year one.
Yeah, it's a decent landing spot because outside of Nwosu, there wasn't really anybody that blew your mind in Seattle. Darrell Taylor, he did finish the season incredibly high as a pass rusher, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, his run defense is still incredibly poor, but which is somewhere where Derek Hall might improve. But it's a little more crowded than I'd like because I didn't really see Derek Hall as like a mind blowing prospect, somebody who's gonna need snaps right away. I feel like he's gonna have to earn them. And Mafe didn't really see the field too much last year. I think Hall's a better prospect than Mafe, but still, I mean, you have Mafe, Taylor, and you have Nwosu, and then you're going to bring in Derek Hall. So it's going to be a little crowded, but they could also be doing a large rotation, somewhat similar to what Philly does. But I think it's going to vary a lot early in the season. They're going to see what their best lineup is. I think it's going to take a little bit of mix match just to see who works best together. So I think for the most part, I mean, you have Mafe and you have Hall or Young. Darrell Taylor's not really that old either, and Nwosu I think is 27. So it's not really an old group. So I think it's just finding who plays best together. So I think it's going to be a pretty big rotation to start, and then they're going to get their best pass rushers out there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, yeah, it might not be right away to start the season. Like you said, there might be a feeling out process there for how these guys fit and who will emerge and see more snaps. But yeah, I think he's a good enough prospect that depth chart is not impossible for him to overtake, right? So it'll be a fun one to watch for sure. How about Isaiah Foskey, going to the New Orleans Saints, second round pick out of Notre Dame? He went 41st overall.
I love the draft capital for Foskey. At first I didn't like the landing spot because I thought of who's already there. You have Cameron Jordan, Peyton Turner, Carl Granderson. So Cameron Jordan, he's like the Iron Man of IDP. Then you have Carl Granderson, who's coming off his best season yet, and he actually was very impressive last year. And then you have Peyton Turner, who was just kind of like that often injured but still first round draft capital edge defender, which seems like the Saints thing now. So let's draft an edge at the end of the first round or mid first round, and just watch him get injured for a while, and we'll never actually see his potential. But Cameron Jordan's not going to last forever. He's, I think, 32 this year, 33. So you bring in a guy explosive like Foskey, he's going to learn from Jordan. He's going to play probably across from whoever wins out. It's going to be Turner and Granderson. I honestly think Granderson's going to win the job this year to start. And then from then on, it's going to be the three men because Jordan's going to be gone soon. So it's going to be Granderson if they re-sign him, Turner if he signs after his rookie contract, if they keep him. So it's like Turner could be gone, and then it's going to be Foskey coming in. So Foskey actually has a path to decent volume.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not year one, but potentially year two, year three. So he's going to be probably a pass rush specialist to start his career, but there's the potential to be a volume player.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, right? It might not be the most exciting landing spot in New Orleans, at least not right now, but it's a lot of these guys have similar situations where we're going to have to be patient and wait it out a little bit because, yeah, I think Carl Granderson, Peyton Turner, these aren't elite edge rushers to make it impossible for him to move up to the front of the depth chart, but I'd still have a tough time seeing a huge role for him as a rookie, at least. I think there's still a lot of growing for him to do as a pass rusher. So playing behind Granderson and maybe Turner makes sense for me. And we know the Saints are going to roll out Cameron Jordan, like you said, for 850 plus snaps as long as he's still breathing. So it might be tougher for him to get in there right out the gate. I'm fine not taking him in rookie drafts right now and waiting it out until the situation clears up a bit because there's going to be a lot of leagues where he's on waivers by the end of the season and you can scoop him up before the start of next year kind of thing, right? So yeah, I think I got him like IDP 23 overall for this rookie class right now. So you don't have to take him in rookie drafts. You could take him at the end if you want, if you got a taxi squad spot or something like that you can stash him on. But I mean, there's no kind of urgency to add Foskey to the roster right now, and might just have to wait a little bit for him to emerge. All right, one more for our top 10 here in this rookie edge class was BJ Ojulari. So second round pick out of LSU. He goes 42nd overall. I guess it was the 41st pick I'm seeing on my graphics here because of Miami screwing things up. But yeah, anyways, BJ Ojulari, I think I had him somewhere in the middle last time we did this, but I just kept getting lower on him as we got closer to the draft. I like the landing spot though. That is one of the better ones for this class. So if he could develop, I think, into a more complete pass rusher, I think he could be a really good IDP option. The problem is he's also not one of those guys that I expect to play a lot on like early downs, not just because of his size, but doesn't really have the strength to win consistently in that role. Typically, he relies more on that kind of quickness to win where, in the past that's just much tougher to do in the NFL. So, it's a great landing spot. There's really not much else there in Arizona. I like Myjai Sanders and Cameron Thomas, but they're not elite names by any means, and they should still play because Ojulari himself is not an elite player. But I have him as like IDP 20 in my rookie ranks, just for considering him from a dynasty perspective. I'm not confident in him as a long-term prospect versus his opportunity in year one, which isn't necessarily guaranteed in year two, I guess, if he doesn't perform well. So I'm lower on him for sure. I might prop him up in redraft ranks, but don't have all that much love for him in dynasty right now.
I really like the landing spot in Arizona because, I mean, like you said, it's Cameron Thomas and Myjai Sanders as the starting outside linebackers right now. And I honestly think with J.J. Watt retiring and Zach Allen moving on to Denver, that Cameron Thomas is probably better off as your 3-4 end taking over for Zach Allen. I mean, I feel like he's incredibly similar to Zach Allen as a player. So I feel like I don't want to say if they were smart because I don't want to say it'd be stupid if they didn't, but I think it would be in their best interest to maybe even try that out to get their young edge defenders all on the field at the same time. I mean, Ojulari, I think, is probably Myjai Sanders is pretty explosive, but I was going to say he's probably the most explosive pass rusher they have. I think he's actually probably more complete as a pass rusher. And in all honesty, I thought he was an incredibly good counter rusher in college. I thought he had good counters, and it's something that Sanders doesn't really have. He's just more of an explosive speed rusher. Cameron Thomas is kind of more of the power hand technique rusher. So I think BJ Ojulari is kind of more the most complete, at least pass rusher they have. But like you said, he won't be big on early downs. He's not going to be a great run defender in the NFL. He's going to need some time to work. He's going to need time to progress. But I really like the landing spot, and I think in Arizona, where the line is incredibly thin, you could see all three of them on the field more often than people are thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, that defensive line is brutal, but I think you're right. Like Cameron Thomas kicking inside, I think that makes a lot of sense. He really is, yeah, very similar to Zach Allen, like you said. So I think that would make sense, especially on those obvious passing situations. Put him and Sanders and Ojulari out there all at the same time, and hopefully develop some kind of pass rush attack, because yeah, there's not a lot of options for them there. I don't think Arizona's going to be very good this year, unfortunately, especially with Kyler Murray still not recovered from an ACL injury, and he might not start the year. So going to be a rough year for Arizona.
I'm okay with that. I love the NFC West getting a little weaker while the 49ers draft a kicker in the third.
Right. Yeah. And are struggling to start either Brock Purdy or Trey Lance.
Or Sam Darnold.
That's right. Yeah, he's entered his name into the mix. Yeah.
It's like San Francisco, you have a clear path to being the easy number one team in the NFC West. Don't make it difficult.
Oh man, yeah. It is gonna be difficult, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. They got some options there. I feel like they might just give Trey Lance the chance. They're so invested in him, man. Yeah.
You gave up 3 first-round picks for him.
You have to give him another shot. I mean, the guy got hurt. It was only 2 games. One of them was like a ridiculous weather game or whatever too. So yeah, you got to give him another shot. I get Brock Purdy performed well last year, but just don't make it Sam Darnold, please. We've seen what Sam Darnold is.
I saw the signing and I was just like, God, no.
Yeah, quarterback controversy with Sam Darnold. Oh man, yeah. So that's our 10 edge defenders and a little San Francisco quarterback talk. We both got a couple sleepers here to throw in. Guys that you can target maybe super late in rookie drafts or after rookie drafts a lot of the time, that have a decent outlook either for this year, or guys that could actually be decent stashes for next year to emerge in decent situations. So I'll let Joey kick us off here. Who is your first sleeper that you like from this edge class?
Zack Harrison from Ohio State. He was drafted by the Falcons, 3rd round, 75th overall. So decent draft capital. And he goes to a team that they've been searching for a pass rusher for years now. I mean, they thought they got it in Dante Fowler a couple of years ago, and that didn't happen. They drafted Arnold Ebiketie last year, and he was okay. He was decent, but he played much better in run defense, honestly, than as a pass rusher. And I think we actually talked about that, how good Ebiketie was as an actual run defender last year during this pod.
Yeah.
But and then they re-signed Lorenzo Carter, who was Lorenzo Carter. You know what you get with Lorenzo Carter. You're not getting pass rush there either. Yeah. They did go sign Bud Dupree, but he's pretty much a pass rush specialist. So Zack Harrison, though he wasn't incredibly productive in college as a pass rusher, like he didn't finish well, his stat numbers didn't jump out to you. He was a imposing player. He's got unbelievable length. I think he's got 36-inch arms. He's just a very big individual. He's a powerful individual, and he's just different from anybody else on that team, I feel like. I mean, Ebiketie's somewhat similar to him. I think Ebiketie is going to be a better pass rusher than Zack Harrison, honestly. But Zack Harrison's he's going to be a good run defender. He's going to be a decent pass rusher, and he has 3rd round draft capital on a team that honestly might be slightly competitive in the NFC South. I think Atlanta has a sneaky chance with some of the additions they made this offseason to actually be competitive in the NFC South. So Zack Harrison, I think he'll see the field. He'll be part of a rotation, but I think he will see the field some as a rookie and the potential in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an improving team. I mean, nothing's done in one off season, but they're definitely improving. I mean, adding Jesse Bates definitely helps that secondary as well, and a few other pieces there. And I mean, yeah, we'll see what Desmond Ritter could do too. But he's definitely got the weapons now with them bringing in Bijan and spending
Mhm.
top 10 picks on tight end, wide receiver, running back now in the last 3 drafts. So,
Right.
no
No
excuses
excuses.
there. I mean, it's going to be up to Ritter to see if he can perform. So, you're right. The NFC South is going to be pretty wild. It should be fun to see what they can do there. So, but yeah, I'm with you. I like Zack Harrison as well. The draft capital is nice, playing out of Ohio State as well. Um, yeah, it's not a great defensive line still. There's guys that he can leapfrog on that depth chart and get on the field. So I like the call with Zack Harrison. Who is your other sleeper?
Byron Young from Tennessee landing with the Los Angeles Rams. Um, he's incredibly explosive. He, like you said right here, he's a good finisher. He's not the most polished as a pass rusher, but his athleticism jumps off the tape. He was huge at the combine. He even in college he showed an ability to even drop in coverage, which is big with the Rams. I know they did that with Floyd a little bit last year.
Mhm.
So Floyd's gone. Um, there's nobody else,
Everybody's
honestly.
gone. Yeah.
Everybody's gone. Like who else? Michael Hoecht, who moved from the inside to outside linebacker at
Right.
he's like what 300 pounds?
Yeah.
He's a 300-pound outside
He's
linebacker.
huge. He's
So
huge. Yeah.
I mean, he played well last year, but I mean,
Yeah.
even outside of Hoecht, there's nobody else. I honestly could see a clear path almost to a starting role as a rookie
Yeah.
for Byron Young.
Yeah, for sure. Their defense is literally the Will Smith empty house meme from Fresh Prince. There's nobody left in LA. It might be the saddest defense in the entire league, and they have arguably the best defensive player in the entire league, which is
Oh
crazy.
man.
Yeah, it's just they're so depleted. There's no proven starters anywhere. Literally anyone can emerge as a starter from this group this season. It's a fascinating edge group. I mean, yeah, look at the names on here. So Michael, oh man, they corrected me on this on the landing spots pod because I said it wrong the first time. I think it's Hoyt. I think that's how they
Is it
said it.
really?
But I think so. Ask Jake Colhagen. He was the one that corrected me. I had no idea. I think I said Hecht originally. Um, so yeah, him. Then there's Nick Hampton, Keir Thomas, Matthew Jester, Ochuan Mathis, Zach Van Valkenburg. I mean, it literally sounds like I'm making names up, and I promise you, I'm not. It is worth a Google for sure. They're
It's like a
gonna
Key
suck,
and
man.
Peele
It's
episode.
yeah, Zach Van Valkenburg is that sounds like a completely made up name. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody is just messing with us with the Rams depth charts. And if not,
And
apologies to the Van Valkenburg family.
And you even mentioned Nick Hampton, and as we were
Yeah,
talking the rookie edge class, I mean, could be a super deep
yeah,
sleeper that can actually see
yeah.
some time on the field.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's completely depleted. It's absolutely wild to see. So yeah, the Rams, they're not going to be good this year. I mean, Aaron Donald can only do so much. So yeah, there's another one for your NFC West.
Yes.
So for me, I had a couple sleepers as well. The first one that I put here was KJ Henry. So he was a
Hmm.
fifth round pick out of Clemson, 137th overall, I guess that is. So goes to the Washington Commanders, and he was actually, interestingly enough about him, he was the top pass rusher at Clemson last season, even ahead of Miles Murphy. So he earned an 84.0 pass rush grade, posted 53 total pressures. Both of those were tops on the team. And the main thing for me with Henry is just taking a really cheap swing on him now, knowing that both Montez Sweat and Chase Young are both scheduled to be UFAs after this season. There's no clear successor for them at this point. I mean, you got to figure one of Sweat or Young will get re-signed, but that still leaves a big hole and opportunity for someone like Henry to step up and potentially show some promise as a rookie and earn that spot going forward. So, he had a breakout year in 2022 for Clemson, so could potentially be putting it all together now. Why not take a really cheap flyer on these guys, and just stash them away and hope that his stock increases after either Chase Young or Montez Sweat departs in free agency.
Yeah, and there was even talks leading up to the draft that both Young and Sweat were available.
Right.
So I
That's
mean,
right.
obviously they're ready to move on. So Henry could, if one gets even traded this year, he could have a potential role the second half of the season if one goes at the trade deadline. But
Yep.
I mean, yeah, after Sweat and Young, it's F.A. Obata, and then there was
Yeah.
Shaka Tony. And Tony's suspended for betting on football. Dumb.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Gosh, just why? So I mean, the depth after Young and Sweat is
It's
shallow.
nothing. Yeah.
So Henry almost comes in as the number 3 already. I mean, Obata
Mhm.
was pretty good last year in times, but he's not overly impressive. So Henry
No.
could come in and be their number 3 edge defender, and possibly after next year, who knows if they even? I'm sure they do re-sign one of them. I think it all depends how this plays out this year with Sweat and Young, but
Mhm.
he could even come in and be their number 1, and who knows, maybe they move on from both.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility, right? I mean, I think if Chase Young can stay healthy for the entire season, I think he'll be able to show enough that they'll be like, okay, we can't let
I hope
him
so. I feel
walk.
like we
But
kind of need it.
yeah, we definitely do. I mean, he was an elite prospect, and he
Yeah.
just hasn't been healthy. So yeah, you got to see the guy obviously stay healthy in the NFL to really have faith in him. But I still feel like it's not over for Chase Young. I think there's definitely an opportunity for him to put it together and be an effective edge rusher that even to the level that he was expected to be. I think it's still early in his career, early enough in his career at least, that we shouldn't close the door on him just yet.
Yeah.
Um, and then at one more sleeper for me, I put Nick Herbig out of Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
So fourth round pick out of Wisconsin uh, is Nick Herbig, and honestly, he definitely lacks like ideal size. So there was talk of him moving to like off ball linebacker in the NFL as well, and that could still happen, which maybe gives him a shot to show off some of his elite pass rush tools as a blitzer in sub packages. A big part of what the Steelers like to do with their defense last year as well. So I really like the fit. Mainly for me though, the depth behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith is pretty uninspiring. And the Steelers lean on those guys a ton on a weekly basis. So there's going to be a need to give those guys some respite. And I think Herbig definitely has the chops to step in early, over the last 2 seasons. So this is when compared to every other edge defender in this class over the last 2 seasons. Herbig had the second best pass rush grade, 92.8. He had the best pass rush grade on true pass sets, 93.2. He had the best pass rush win rate overall at 25.4%. And he had the best pressure rate at 19.4%. And the fourth best run defense grade as well at 83.1. So even as a smaller edge, the man has significant pass rush upside if he can get on the field. And Highsmith's scheduled to be a free agent at the end of the season as well. So there's an opportunity there. That's kind of what makes these guys sleepers, right? It's a little bit of projecting for the future and what they could be, and trying to figure out where the opportunities are. But yeah, Herbig's another one of those guys I wouldn't mind stashing in deeper leagues and taking a shot, because if he gets a starting role in Pittsburgh, that's massive from for a fantasy perspective, as we've seen with guys like
Mhm.
Highsmith and obviously TJ Watt.
Yeah, and I saw a stat on Nick Herbig. I mean, he spends his life in the backfield. I think 26% of his career
Yeah.
tackles were tackles for a loss.
It's unreal. Yeah,
That's
he
pretty
was.
crazy. That's an impressive stat.
Yeah,
So I
and
mean,
coming out of Wisconsin too, you'll have the
right,
TJ Watt connection, right?
right. And then so I mean, Alex Highsmith, he's been great in his career, but I see like Alex Highsmith as a rookie, Herbig is incredibly similar. He's a very
Yeah.
similar type of player. He's not overly explosive. He's not a big player. So I mean, there's definitely the potential there. And I think he'll have some time on the field this year in the rotation. I'm sure he'll give Highsmith a breather every now and then. So
Yeah. I think so, right? I mean, there's only so many snaps you can play Highsmith and TJ Watt. Like, and
right.
just the other options aren't great. I mean,
Yeah.
Quincy Roche is there, and I think like DeMarvin Leal, like guys like that just I don't think you're really gonna trust on a regular basis. But I think Herbig has the upside, man. I think that's the one that could emerge from that group, at least as the number 3 to start his career.
Yeah, I agree.
Nice. Well, there you have it, folks. Another one in the can. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I always enjoy getting to chat to the tooth himself, Mr. Joseph Hagan. Joey, thanks so much for coming back on, shooting the shit, dropping the knowledge, and most of all, for just being you. I appreciate you, my man. Thank you.
Oh, I love it, man. Thanks again for having me on. It's one of my favorites.
Absolutely, buddy. I appreciate it. We get to do this every year, and yeah, we'll run it back again, and we'll talk more. 2020. Oh my God, 2024 Edge Defenders next time.
My gosh.
So that'll be fun. But yeah, before we do that, please remind the good folks where they can find you and what you have coming up over at Football Guys.
You could find me at Twitter at Joey the Tooth IDP, and all of my written work, rankings, and projections at footballguys.com. My dynasty projections are going to be in pretty soon, which are going to update the draft dominator. So the draft dominator at footballguys.com is literally, it's a tool we have for you doing startups. It's like you input your scoring, you input anything you want. You want your build to be for the future. You want your build to be win now. It adjusts your rankings for you. So it's all projection based. So we go and we do projections. We do season projections, and then we have your your high end and then your low end, the percentage you think it's gonna hit, and then how many years you think they have left in their career, and it just breaks it all down to a crazy formula to adjust your rankings to however you want to do your build. It's insane what they do with the work with all the coding and everything on the tool, but that's what one of the funnest things I've been a part of at Football Guys is
Nice.
being a part of that draft dominator. So that'll be updated really soon with all the rookies in there now. I mean, we have, oh man, there's so many NFL players projected in there. It's overwhelming, but it's the end product is fantastic. So if you need a tool that's going to help you draft, if you really need help, especially with even IDP, if you're new to it, you're not sure because everybody's complaining that the scoring's different. We'll just go to the draft dominator. It doesn't matter. Put it in your scoring, and it's
Yeah.
going to adjust your rankings for you.
Love.
Projection-based rankings. IDP is not going to have a set scoring. Just do projection-based rankings. It'll adjust for you.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's the way to do it, man. I love that. That sounds like a really cool tool. Definitely check that out. Check out Joey's work over at Football Guys. I thank you again, good sir. As for me, everything I write is over at pff.com or on Twitter at pff_Macri. And everything I speak is pretty much here on the IDP show feed. So you can find my rookie rankings, Dynasty IDP rankings, I think veteran winners and losers I did this week, rookie sleepers, all that stuff over at PFF. Most of it's free as well. So give it a read. I would greatly appreciate it and love you all forever. And I know the fellas over here at the IDP show would also love if you checked out the IDP show draft kit over on the IDPshow.com, where you could find rankings for Dynasty, Best Ball, Redraft, and rookies as well. Some IDP, ADP in there, team by team write ups, breakouts, sleepers, fades, and more. Only $5 a month. IDPshow.com. Support those wonderful people with hearts of gold. Next episode, we're looking at this very interesting rookie safety class. John Glosser is joining me once again to make sense of where these guys all fit in and figure out which ones are worth spending draft capital on. So until next time, ID peace out.